Michael Clyne is a senior analyst for Drum Cusack, the firm specializing in risk assessment. How much is fact and how much is fiction?
Suicide bombings have increased in the past month because Boko Haram is shifting to more traditional terrorist tactics as they've been routed out of the territory that they held by the counterinsurgency. As they do that, they shift towards suicide bombings and ambushes. It's true that a lot of these suicide bombings are reported to be young girls. That's been a really troubling legacy of the Chibok kidnapping.
Is this a case where Boko Haram is that strong, or Nigeria is just that weak?
I think the key word here is strategy. Boko Haram has a strategy. It's been portrayed as a ragtag group of gunmen, but they are very adaptable. The question is, does the government have a strategy? The colossus of the Nigerian government, not adaptable. They haven't been able to adapt their conventional warfare approach to the asymmetric and terroristic suicide bombings and attacks that Boko Haram can use as it shifts into slavery.
It is a sign that maybe they have not been as decimated as people thought.
There are three, at least, real reasons why we see the sudden escalation. One is that there's a new president in town, and they want to hit him hard before he can stand up. Two, they've adapted their strategy to the conventional counterinsurgency techniques of the government to retreat from holding territory towards more asymmetric warfare that relies on sleeper terrorist cells, more in the model of al-Qaeda. The third reason is that we're in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan, and that is actually an ISIL prerogative.
Okay, so what are the implications of his win on Nigeria's two militant movements, Boko Haram in the north and the Niger Delta militancy in the south?
Right, so Nigeria basically has two historic militant movements. One everyone knows about right now is Boko Haram, which is raging in the northeast of the country, the region where Buhari himself is from. And there's also a latent Niger Delta militancy, which people might remember more from the early 2000s. A lot of the disbanded militant groups in the south have threatened to take to the streets or produce more unrest or violence in protest of Buhari's candidacy. But I think ultimately we believe that the leaders of those militant groups will be waiting to see what concessions they can get from a new Buhari administration before making more attacks. After all, the president that originally brought the Niger Delta militancy under control was the former President Yar'Adua, who was a Muslim from the same northern region as Buhari.
Defeat an incumbent. So what does that say about Nigeria's population, its voters, and how their views may have changed dramatically? And how has he been able to shed his past as a military ruler?
It's a major sign of Nigeria's maturity as a democracy, how far it's come just from 1997 when multi-party elections began. Like I said, I think the greatest impact that Buhari has had so far was his election. His election did more to instill confidence and unite the country than probably anything in the past 18 years. Nigeria is an extraordinarily young country. 70% of its population is under the age of 30. So starting or getting off on the right foot now in 2015 could mean a lot for its own political development.
The influence is going to stay the same. In fact, it's spreading just from the economic model that I was just alluding to political, where China's getting involved in building political capacity with African nations, to security and being involved in peacekeeping operations. But it is, and in those instances, actually, you see somewhat that it's a two-way influence. Although it's heavily weighted on one end, you see China, delving into certain doctrines that it would never explore internally or in the Asian sphere. As we see certain African countries who have grown commodity dependent on their relationship with China really crash economically. But there's still a lot of room to be made in terms of major infrastructure development projects like this information superhighway. And that still has some very positive influence potential with driving wages and capacity and kind of higher value investment up in Africa itself.
Michael Clyne joining us from New York City. Thank you.